There's always a reason to always choose joy. There's something deeper that the world can't destroy. Smile when you think you can't. Smile, get up and dance. Smile, there's a bigger plan. The storm only lasts for a while. So smile.
Welcome to Change Happened, Then What? Each week, I share real-life stories from incredible people I've met over the past 20 plus years. Stories of change, challenge, and what comes next. These are moments that shaped them, the pivots that led to purpose, and the raw emotions in between. My hope is that these conversations inspire you, offer hope, and in the end, leave you with a smile. So wherever you are, take a deep breath and let's dive in, because change happens, and that's where the story really begins. I'm your host, Heather Holt, and I'm so happy to have you here today. A little heads up about today's episode. My two very dedicated and very vocal co-producers, Waylon and Dalton, decided to chime in a few times while we were recording. You might hear their tail wagging commentary in the background now and then. They assure you it was all in the name of spreading smiles, and they do send their sincere apologies. Welcome to episode 3, Heart of a Warrior, Soul of a Mother, Julie's Journey. Today, I'm honored to introduce you to my dear friend Julie. When we first met, she already had 2 adopted boys and was in the process of welcoming a set of twins into her heart and home. Like many of the inspiring guests you'll hear from this season, Julie was also a business owner, but her journey to getting there wasn't linear. After climbing the corporate ladder at IBM and thriving as a senior engineer, Julie realized something was missing. She loved leading people, but microchips? Not so much. This sparked an internal dilemma, one many of us can relate to. What happens when success doesn't feel like purpose? Through deep soul searching, Julie discovered that her true passion was helping others overcome challenges, reaching their goals, and creating more harmony in their lives. That passion became the foundation for her business, Harmony at Last. Julie's story is one of grit, grace, and unwavering love. So let's dive in.
I was going to get pregnant and then I would adopt. I always wanted to adopt, but I thought that's what I was going to do. And well, that didn't work, right? Like that didn't work. Instead, I found I could not get pregnant. So then we did adopt, and then I thought, well, we're going to adopt 2 children, and then we adopted 4 children because it was serendipity. And I think the right kids always come into the right family at the right time, and they were meant to be my kiddos, and I was meant to be their mom, but that wasn't planned. And then I was going along just trying to parent and work and do all of the things that people do as they're having young families, until I did spontaneously, like years later. But that was really hard to have a bio baby and be going through all of those new feelings and new changes, body sensations of pregnancy and breastfeeding, and having, at that point, the kids were 7, 6, and the twins were 2.5.
As we started our conversation, Julie began to recall some of the last moments we shared. Some quiet, tender times when I was doing Reiki sessions for her baby. What I didn't know until this interview all these years later was just how pivotal those moments were for her.
And that Reiki was so transformative for the kids, and also for me, and knowing part of my journey is knowing that I relied on other skilled practitioners for energy work, for either energy clearings or hands-on, healing techniques. And one of my goals, or as my life unfolded with all of the craziness that it did, was I want to be able to do that for myself.
For those of you who might not be familiar with Reiki, it's a Japanese technique for stress reduction, relaxation, and healing. It's a gentle, hands-on practice rooted in the idea that we all have an unseen life force energy flowing through us. When that energy is low, we're more likely to feel stress or fall ill, but when it's high, we're better equipped to feel joy, peace, and overall well-being. The word Reiki comes from two Japanese words, Rei, meaning God's wisdom, or the higher power, and Ki, meaning life force energy. Together, it translates to spiritual guided life force energy. It's safe, natural, and a supportive healing method that complements all forms of care. If you're curious to learn a little more about it, I'm going to include some information in the show notes and more on my website that you can read about. At the time, I didn't realize why Julie had started to drift out of my day-to-day life. I would see her from time to time at the grocery store, or she would stop by the store to say hi. But really, we didn't see each other all that often, and I figured with 5 children in tow, it was better that I didn't ask. What I learned through this conversation is that she was stepping into a whole new chapter, one that would require every bit of strength that she had. She had become a full-blown warrior, a fierce protector of what mattered most to her family.
And when I feel like I almost disappeared from public view for a long time, after the birth of my youngest, it felt like our household fell apart. Our home fell apart. Adoption is such a beautiful thing, and it has been a miracle in my life to parent and to be blessed with parenting such amazing kids. And there's also trauma, and there's grief, and there's loss. So it's not a simple picture. And so when we had a bio baby enter into the family, the way I describe it now is everybody's wheels fell off. It felt like it just all unraveled. And I thought, right through my plans, I was going to birth and take a little bit of time off and then get started back on my business again. And I had a client's booked, all ready to go. My baby didn't take a bottle, which was the least of the problems that ended up happening, because all the other kids it all fell apart, and it all came out with just behavior that was going sideways. So that became really, really, really hard. And it was the type of sideways that people don't really talk about, it's not typical. It's quite out of the normal spectrum of childhood behavior. It was all-consuming to try to stabilize the family. I tried everything. I'm an avid reader and learner and always willing to figure it out. And I had this deep desire to figure it out because there was so much pain and trauma and acting out that we needed to do something. So we actually got on the very painful roller coaster of figuring out trauma and behavior and unraveling it. So we were not a family that we could go and take our kids anywhere or have what you would consider a normal holiday celebration or activity, because holidays are triggering. Adoption days are triggering. Birthdays are triggering. And rightly so. There's so much trauma there. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be able to feel their feelings. It can make a situation catastrophic. Mm-hmm. And I remember one small little nugget when the kids were at that very young age, I remember we had always hosted family at our house for the holidays. We were trying to get dinner ready and everything, but we just got slammed because holidays are hard, and we didn't realize we just had to change the way we planned to do holidays. At that point, we were trying to do holidays the way we wanted to do holidays, not necessarily of what worked for humans who were struggling. So one of the kids was acting out because they didn't like a toy or something that was part of the gift. But the acting out was a full-on explosion of emotion, and the house unraveled with the level of throwing. And in the process, all of the Easter baskets got thrown, and all of that plastic Easter grass got thrown. We were supposed to host a party like an hour later, and we have an unraveled human one human in a family, when you have a lot of humans with a lot of traumas, one human unravels the next, right? It's that law of attraction played out in the worst possible ways. And then you end up having 5 unraveled humans. And my husband and I were just trying to keep our shit together. And we're feeling the stress because people are supposed to be coming over. And not only do we not have food prepared, it's a holiday, so we're having this heightened level of wanting to do it well or right, whatever that's supposed to mean. The house blew up. And I remember my sister showing up an hour before everybody else because she was supposed to help us get things ready. And she walked in and she said, "It looks like Easter just vomited all over your house." Yeah, it does. Yes, it does. We did the best we could that day, but that was like a starting point of it has to be different. As a mom, there was this desire, I'm going to help my kids, and this is not neurotypical. Whatever's going on here is quite off the rails. And so we started down the path of experts and guidance and therapists and you name it. At one point, we had all 4 of the older kids in therapy every week. And then we added in my husband and I going to therapy to help us figure out how to parent this group of humans that week too. So it was like 5 therapy sessions a week, tons of money, trying to follow all the guidance that was being given, feeling like I'm pushing a boulder up the hill, and it is not working. And it's certainly not working fast enough, because you might talk to a therapist and share privately about some of the things your kids are struggling with that you know, and then your kid shows up at play therapy and doesn't talk about any of it. And we had put 4 in, even though not all 4 were all having the same problems. We put 4 in just to try to stabilize the ship. It's not working because they get 1 hour having this play space. They're not talking about the things that are really triggering the underlying emotional state. And then the rest of the week, they're with me. So I had to stop my business, which crushed me, because I could not leave the home. And I never thought I would be a full-time stay-at-home mom. I did. I was, because that's what was needed. And we were in crisis mode. I had my husband's help at night and on the weekends, but other than that, I had it all by myself. We weren't homeschooling at that time. We homeschool now, but we weren't at that time. So I had a little reprieve with some of them going into school. But then they would hold it all together in school and would unravel even further at home. And I remember my husband telling this therapist we were seeing together to help us with parenting. He was so honest, but man, I had it afterwards. He said to her, "Really hard at home, and I look forward to going to work during the week so I don't have to deal with it." I mean, how many years later?
Yeah.
15 years later, I'm like, oh, yeah. You know how bad it is. And here, when he's with me, you get 2 to support 5, But then when he's not with me, it's 1 supporting 5 with the same level of extreme behavior.
During our conversation, Julie shared a book that she found on her journey, The Explosive Child by Dr. Ross Greene. It illuminated her journey while she walked the path of therapy with her children. Dr. Greene introduces something called the CPS model. It stands for Collaborative and Proactive Solutions. It's a powerful approach that helps parents and caregivers understand and respond to challenging behaviors, not with punishment, but with empathy, teamwork, and problem solving. Julie found this framework especially helpful during the more intense and emotional moments that came up along the way. If this resonates with you or someone you know, I'll include links in the show notes where you can learn more about the book and Dr. Greene's work. Now, while The Explosive Child wasn't the answer to everything for Julie and her family, it was a little stepping stone for them, one of many they would step along the way. But I'll let Julie continue from here and share more of her journey in her own words, because no one tells it quite like she does.
And I would look around at seeing what I called normal families, and ours was completely not. And thinking, well, my kids should be able to do this at this developmental stage, or we should be able to go here or participate like this, and we just can't. And one therapist said something to me that was a really great point. Give your kids what they need when they need it, even if it's not within the developmental typical things that a kid would need at that age, because then they can grow beyond that. And that gave me a lot of relief, because at that point, even though it wasn't developmentally typical, I could go back and give a kid what the need might have been that they had, and it might have been, something 3-4 years regressed. But I could meet that need, and then I could start to see some progress. It still felt like pushing a boulder up the hill. It still felt really hard. And what I had to do was we changed around everything in life. Like birthdays became something we just celebrated at home in the family. Some of the kids wanted something very simple and not much participation with the family because it was too painful. Like I started to really dive down the trauma path. And of course, when you dive down the trauma path, when you're a parent and you're trying to help the humans that you love so dearly, you also start to go unravel your own trauma, because that's there too. My anxiety and terror, really, that I had to touch, that I had to do to heal, because you heal and then you can be the light for somebody else to heal, but you can't save somebody else, no matter if they're young or old. And of course, that is a desire, right? We want to save our children. We want to save our spouse. We want to save people. We want to help them. And it's a real learning of like, heal or heal thyself. I now am so grateful for how extreme our family situation got, because it took me into the pit, but in the pit I found myself. We were muddling along for a long time, and then teenage years happened, and that's when the crisis really began, because everything's changing for a human as they go through puberty, and so everything is coming out sideways. It got to the extremes that, I won't go into a lot of details for my kids' privacy's sake, but to the point that as a parent, you don't know if the family or the child will survive all of the things that are happening. At that point, we had avoided getting formal diagnosis of things, mental health wise and developmentally wise, because I just don't like labels. But we did end up getting alphabet soup level labels to open up services, even more services than what we were already paying privately for. You need labels. That's just the way our system works. And we have a lot of labels in the family. I mean, we cross the whole spectrum from autism, ADHD, anxiety, there's developmental disabilities too, and for learning, and there's just a lot of labels. It's like, yeah, I already knew this, but now labels open services. The extremes as a parent, when you don't know if the family or you or your kid is going to survive the level of crisis you find yourself in, that touched a terror in me unlike any other terror I had felt. And then realizing how little control you have. You can control yourself and your responses. You can influence another. And then you have to hold that light yourself and hope and pray. Mm-hmm. So we did hit rock bottom in the level of crisis that we were experiencing. There was a lot of dark times. I am so thankful because my husband and I stayed together through it all. And I think if we didn't have such a deep friendship and a deep commitment to communication, and specifically like nonviolent communication, that you talk about the problem and you don't attack the person, that you don't yell, you don't name call, you don't blame, because all of those things participated in those. If we had been so unraveled that we then turned on each other, our marriage would not have survived that. A lot of marriages don't. They don't survive that level of crisis. Like when the kids are in crisis or there's a family crisis, a lot of marriages fall. 5 kids who are neurotypical without trauma and exposures that they had in the womb, that's one thing. You could lead a parade and everybody could go on a picnic and it's quite nice and it's lovely and everybody gets along. But when you add in so many people with so many traumas and so many differences, and you have that all in one unit, family unit, it's hard. So I remember when my husband and I, we were, of course, in these crises, and we saw friends of ours getting divorced, and then they were going on and dating other people. And we actually joked, and it was kind of sarcastic, funny, not funny, that people who get a divorce can actually go on a date because the other spouse watches the kid. When we did try to date, we had 2 caregivers, and sometimes we even had the older 4 with 2 different caregivers in different spots so that you couldn't spin energy so much, and then taking the youngest one with us sometimes. So it was really not date. Forget about like having sex when you wanted to. Like, good luck with that. And at the worst of it, we're like co-parents and housemates. Not that we didn't have love for each other, but we had nothing left to give at the end of the night. We had been outdone. And, when we were in the biggest of the biggest crisis modes, we even like covered shifts throughout the day and night. Sometimes things go to shit in the middle of the night. You think that everything's stable, and then like 10 p.m. comes around and now things are stable. And you can feel and get into life or death circumstances that are happening. And so you need to be available. So as a parent, you're doing everything you can in that moment, but there's no time for your partner. And luckily, both of us are of high integrity. There was never a moment where we felt like cheating or wanting to be with somebody else or wanting to leave the marriage or any of that. And our marriage vows were, unless there was abuse, adultery, or addiction, we were in it. And we were in it for forever. And we were in it with unconditional love. And because of that, that held us where we could have just fallen apart. I was on all the time. And my number one priority was heal my kids. That was my goal.
I don't know about you, but stories like Julie and her husband's, you don't just hear those every day. Raising 5 children, each with their own unique challenges, while holding their marriage together and finding ways to stay connected, that's no small feat. Their journey is nothing short of incredible, and I truly believe it offers hope to so many parents and couples out there who are navigating the hard stuff, who are doing their best to raise kids and still showing up for each other. Now let's get back to Julie's amazing story.
The only way out is through. You cannot get there unless you go into the pit. And so now when I, mentioned to somebody like, oh, we went through hell, where you don't know if you're going to live or die, that you don't know if anything will ever, if it will all just be shattered beyond repair. And now I say, I am so, so thankful for that, because I would not be who I am had I not gone into that darkness. You don't get there. You don't get your power back by avoiding the darkness. I'm tremendously grateful for all of the hooligan behaviors and all of the crisis and all of the sleepless nights, filled with terror about the well-being of my humans, and for the times where my marriage felt like passing strangers in the dark. I am so grateful for it now because it's unshakable. The wisdom, the power, the knowledge, the love, the depth of presence, the energy, the light someone brings when they've gone through that, it's unshakable. So now I'm incredibly grateful. But at the time, I would have paid good money if somebody had told me how to piece my pretty little life back together. But I will tell people, I'm not here to talk about something for forever. We really want to heal. And healing is not going to look like gluing the pieces of your pretty little life back together.
Yeah.
That is not healing. Healing is about cracking it open, finding who you really are and what you are, and everything transforms.
Julie and I talked for a while longer about all of the good and not so good therapists she and her husband met along the way. She shares about one specialist in particular, someone she describes as phenomenal, who truly understood adoption and trauma. It was through his guidance that they began learning the ins and outs of how to be the best parents they could be for their children. But perhaps one of the most powerful parts of Julie's journey is what happened next. She started to realize that in order to fully show up for her children, she needed to begin healing parts of herself too. So she bravely stepped into her own healing path, one that led her back to her roots of her childhood. That's when she received her own alphabet soup diagnosis, CPTSD, or Complex PTSD. For anyone who isn't familiar, CPTSD can develop after repeated or prolonged trauma, especially within relationships, where a person feels powerless, unseen, or unsafe. It's more than a diagnosis. It's an acknowledgement of all the ways someone has had to survive again and again. Julie's discovery was a turning point because in that moment, she realized that the real healing for herself and her family could only begin when she was willing to face her own story with compassion. If parts of her journey resonate with you, I've added some helpful links in the show notes about CPTSD and how to find support. You're not alone.
I happened to find a therapist who, he's passed now, so I can't give anybody his name, but he was so amazing. But he did eye movements, and he was familiar with Gestalt. And he had a Buddhist philosophy, and I was raised Christian, and I'm also very spiritual and very open to the wisdom that is in other religions and modalities besides my own. And so that was perfect because there's a lot of mindfulness to be brought in, and really the mind being the cause of suffering. And I was diagnosed with CPTSD from my own childhood forward. And so I took the time to start unraveling everything. Just everything. I made a commitment to myself that I was going to heal. Because most people will say you can't really heal anxiety, you only live with it. You can't really heal these mental health things. We have to drug it with a pharmaceutical or, live with it or do whatever we're going to do and cope the best we can. And I'm like, no, I want radical healing. I know that there is a way to live without suffering, and I want that.
Right.
And I'm willing to put it all on the line, and I will figure it out. Because I don't want to keep moving forward in a way that is something less than whole and healed. And that was my commitment I made to myself. And then that follow-on commitment is I'm going to shine that light, my inner light, my healed space, so that the divine sparkle in me can shine, because I've stopped putting crap all over it. Then I hope and pray that I can light a path and that my kids take that on too. And I'm also going to recognize that I can't make them heal.
Remember that Reiki we talked about earlier in the show? Well, after everything Julie's walked through, after all the therapy, the breakthroughs, the hard days, and the healing, energy work has found its way back into her life. It didn't come with fireworks or big revelations, but rather a gentle nudge, a return to something that had once brought peace, now showing up again like an old friend at just the right moment. And with an old friend. This time it wasn't just for her children. It was for her, to ground her, to help her reconnect with her body, her spirit, and that deep inner knowing that had guided her all along. It's a reminder that healing isn't a straight line. Sometimes it circles back, and the things that once helped us heal often come back to meet us, just when we're ready for the next layer.
The thing that finally helped the kids was energy work. If I knew then what I know now, and anybody who listens to your show, do the energy work first. So much easier to work things on the non-physical than it is to work through the density of matter. You are not going to find anybody in mainstream telling you to go do an energy clearing. It isn't covered by insurance, and they don't even talk about that. Like the typical in mainstream, they look at you and they see you as this being in front of them, and they know you have a mind, and they know you have emotions, and they know you have a body, and then they want to talk it to death to try to get somebody to heal. Well, you cannot talk to death trauma. It's so stored so deeply in a human's subconscious and in their energetic field, you are not going to lift it through talking, which is why typical therapies that just want you to talk don't even touch us. I had known about energy for a long time. I mean, you and I have known each other so long, and we know about energy. But for some reason, I had not thought to have the first go-to in crisis to be energy work. I understood energy, but I never even thought to apply it. So we were huge crisis points as we were in the teen mode, and the crises were getting really big. I had this thought, I know this person, and I said, I'm going to call him. I'm going to ask him to do the house. I'm going to have him do a clearing on everybody in the house, but maybe that's going to help shift some of the behaviors. I have no other ideas. I am out of ideas. My husband, of course, thought it was really hokey, and away we went. The house started to transform. The family started to transform because we were all receiving a shift for energy, and we were starting to work at the actual layer of where the trauma is stored in the energetic body. That was the point at which it was a turnaround for us. All the specialists And all of the people that we had on our team, I mean, we had caseworkers, we had you name it on our team, could not understand how the kids were getting better. And I kept my little secret, well, until now.
Julie shares this part of her story now because the energy work her and her family experienced was so transformative. It sparked something deep within her. She realized that this kind of healing wasn't just something she wanted others to do for her, it was something she felt called to do for herself. So she turned her own hands on, stepping fully into the work, and began learning how to be the one offering this energy, first for herself and her family, then for others, teaching along the way.
It was life transforming, and it was at that point that I really learned energy first, physicality second. If life isn't working out, go sit with your energy first. So I did start learning energy clearing and balancing, and then I started doing it myself for the kids and the family, and I've been teaching them. By the way, they're phenomenal humans now. They're phenomenal. Like, anybody who would meet them would have no idea that we were in the pit or at that level of crisis. They're the most amazing humans.
Knowing Julie the way I do, it comes as no surprise to me that her children are growing into phenomenal humans. They now range in age from 14 to 24, and she and her husband have been married for 27 years, a testament to their unwavering love, resilience, and deep commitment to each other and their family. Recently, Julie has reignited her business, Harmony at Last, with renewed vision, one that reflects the full spectrum of who she is today. She now weaves in energy clearings and a deeper level of healing work, bringing together all the lessons, growth, and transformation from her journey. It's been quite the ride for her, wild, powerful, and full of heart. So as we bring our conversation to a close, I ask her the question I ask everybody: what keeps you smiling every day?
My family, my kids, and then within myself, it's just magical. It's like, wow. Thing now that can come out in a way that it could never before is that word delight. To have that lightness that comes with play, that's amazing. And to be able to play with my family and laugh and love, and that keeps me going now. The word delight, and seeing how amazing it all turned out to be.
And of course, I couldn't let Julie go without asking one more thing. If there was one piece of advice you'd want to leave with our listeners today, what would it be?
Address your energy first. If you don't know how to do that, then find somebody who can help you with that. I mean, whether that's me or you or, a friend down the street or whoever, but learn how to do that. Learn how to address your energy first. Become aware of your thoughts, become aware of your feelings, actually start listening to your inner wisdom.
Listening to your inner wisdom, what a powerful piece of advice to leave us with. How many times have we all said, I knew it, I should have listened to my gut? Julie's story has truly left me feeling inspired and hopeful, especially in a world that can feel a little chaotic these days. If today's episode moved you, gave you something to think about, or even brought a smile, leaving a 5-star review wherever you're listening would mean the world to me and help this little podcast grow.
There's always a reason to always choose joy. There's something deeper that the world can't destroy. Smile when you think you can't. Smile, get up and dance. Smile, there's a bigger plan. The storm only lasts for a while. So
Thank you for
smile.
tuning in to Change Happen, Then What? I hope today's story offered you insight, connection, or maybe even a little smile. Our theme music is Smile by Sidewalk Prophets from their album, Things That Got Us Here. You can find more about them at sidewalkprophets.com. Want to dive deeper into today's conversation? Check out the show notes or head over to changehappenedpodcast.com for links and more about our guests. Have your own then what moment you'd like to share? I'd love to hear it. Just email me at changepodcast@yahoo.com. And hey, if this episode made you smile, why not pass it along? Send it to a friend, your dog walker, your favorite neighbor, or hey, even grandma. You know she'd send it to her whole book club. Change Happened, Then What? Is written, edited, and produced by me, Heather Holt, at Holt Hill Studios, with the enthusiastic help of my two very vocal co-producers, Waylon and Dalton. Until next time, take care of your heart and keep smiling.